how do you end a situation when things are great, but it's not right? And that's a lot harder than when we know something is wrong, you know? So that it was like that bravery and that much trusting of myself. And this is the thing, like somebody had asked me, people ask me questions like, well, don't you just get told if your relationship's done? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Like no one's telling me what to do with my life. Like I that's not how that works, right? We are deciding what we do with our life. Like if I can stay in whatever relationship I want, but I get reflections back that are prompting me to my own inner knowing.
Welcome to the Sisterhood of the Rose podcast. I'm Lily.
And I'm Jess.
And we're here to lead you into deeper spiritual embodiment.
What does it mean to be spiritual and to live a soul-led life? We're going to dive deep into how we navigate our own journeys and get into the realness of it all.
We created this podcast for you to step into empowerment and become the leader in your life.
We invite you to walk this path with us. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have a special guest on the podcast, Christina Rice. So if you don't know who Christina Rice is and you're in the spiritual space, what are you doing? Christina is such an activator. She is one of those people that really brings people together in the spiritual space from what I've seen. And actually, she was the first person that I found in the spiritual space. I can't remember exactly how I stumbled across her, but she was the one that kind of activated the spiritual world for me. And then just from there, obviously, we find our own mentors and teachers and XYZ, but I've been in Christina's space for quite some time. And this conversation today, we were just so excited to have with her. She talked a lot about her new book and relationships. And it was truly such an enlightening conversation. Jess and I were like having realizations the whole way through. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I feel like even after the recording of the episode, I was just in a deep contemplation for days, just thinking about so many different things that she touched on. And it's just really interesting because just like Lily just mentioned, Christina has been an activator for her in her spiritual journey. And it was the same exact thing for me. And it's really funny because, she was this activator for both of us on our spiritual journeys. And this was when Lily and I didn't even know each other. And that also speaks to just like the connecting aspect, because Lily and I definitely have connected, not directly through her, but through another person that is like very closely in her field. And so it's just really cool. It feels like a very full circle moment to be able to have her on the podcast and to just give you guys this insight into love and relationships in a very new way. She offers a lot of different perspectives that are very, very progressive, I would say, in terms of how we can approach love and relationships. And it's just going to give you guys a lot to think about. I mean, we talk about the concept of the one, her perspective on if we really do have one person, just being that we're always in this pursuit. I feel like, especially as women, of like, we need to find the one. And we also talk about marriage. We talk about divorce. We talk about, Lily asked a really great question about like your first love versus, what was your question? It was something around first love and.
Yeah, it was what's the difference, or what's her perspective on first love versus soulmate connections versus this like actual soul resonance with someone, or like the one, like what's a first love versus the one. And again, we talk about what the one really means. So you have to listen to kind of tune in around that. But yeah, a lot of these kind of nuances when it comes to relationships that I think we've all experienced. And I think relationships can be such a powerful influencer of our life direction and life path. And not addressing relationships, I think is just would be like a huge oversight for us, like on this podcast, simply because we are here to empower and show a version of embodiment around self-trust and navigating leadership for ourselves. And we live in this world with other people, and it's imperative to look at the whole pie when it comes to empowerment, leadership, spiritual paths, journeys. It's all very interconnected with the people that are around us.
Absolutely. So we'll leave it there for you guys, but buckle up because this is a super juicy episode. We are so excited for you guys to hear it. So enjoy. Okay, Christina Rice, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's cool to see you guys together doing this.
I know. We are so excited to have you. I mean, we were talking just obviously before you came on, and we were like, Christina has just evolved so much in the time that, because both of us have been in your field for like a few years now. And we were like, just watching how you've transformed like through your business has been so wild, and I feel like you are such a way shower in that, and it's been amazing just to see you in that capacity. So we're so excited to have you here. We want to know, just to kind of give our listeners a brief if you could just give them a brief introduction to who you are, and we'd love to know like the main focal point of your work right now.
Yeah, well, I'm Christina, the channel. And I am an intuitive channel. I'm an energy healer. I am the founder of an energy healing modality called a high. So I train other energy healers in their intuitive gifts and their energy healing abilities. And I channel. I work with clients, opening up that more now. I am an author. I've written 5 different books at this point. So I focus a lot on manifestation and energetics. I've been podcasting for close to a decade. So that's kind of like the gist of what I do. I think it all comes back to like, intuitive work, energy healing, and really all of that is about manifestation, which I know is very fluffy. But when I talk about manifestation, I'm talking about like, that's what we're here to do as humans, right? Create things in the physical. And so what are easier ways to do that? And so for me, all of that started with my background in health and my own struggles with chronic illness and like, how do I heal my body? Like that's pretty profound. It's manifestation isn't just like, oh, I want to manifest a new car. It's like, I've used this to heal my body from chronic illness, and build a 7-figure company and build multiple companies. So that's kind of the core of what I do.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, we know a lot about your work, but because you're so transformative, multidimensional, all of those things, we just kind of wanted to hear it from you as to where you are at this moment in time. As you obviously are aware, our podcast is named The Sisterhood of the Rose. And I think it was Jess, or maybe it was both of us, we saw on your story one day, not too long ago, that you were also connected to the rose in like a deep way, but we don't really know what that means for you. We'd love to hear a little bit more about that. So like, what does the rose mean to you? It's also on the cover of your newest book. So anything that you want to share around that, around the rose?
Yeah. I feel like that connection has been with me since I was born. As a little girl, my room was just like flowers, roses. Like that was my thing. I would wear clothes with roses all over it. It's just like been one of those resonance things. And I think when I really started to understand that more, was probably, maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, when I started working with a lot of different spiritual mentors as my gifts were opening up. And when I started working a lot more with Mary Magdalene and bringing that connection in with like my channeling work with Yeshua and Goddess Isis, that's really when, intuitively and like past life remembrance came back related to the Temple of Isis. and the connection with the rose there and with Mary Magdalene. And basically, you know, that symbol, it's funny because I had just intuitively, when I first started doing energy healing, I got the guidance very strongly, like you need a giant picture of a rose and it needs to go in your energy healing room in a certain place. And I actually had one of my clients who's an artist. She custom created this beautiful piece of artwork for me, this giant picture of a hand holding a rose. And I had this image very specifically, and we embedded different energy healing symbols into the rose. And so it's a really meaningful piece for me, and especially even like just having that client make it for me. And it's been in my energy healing room like ever since, through every move, everything. And you know, that symbol was used in ancient times as a signal of what happens in here stays in here. Like that was the symbol. Particularly in terms of the women, you know, spreading messages of Christ consciousness, and doing that work within the Temple of Isis, which there was reverence there, and there was also people who did not like that, and that was dangerous, you know. And so different symbols like that have been used as like a protection symbol, so to speak. So there's that component. There's also obviously, you know, the rose herself. Besides like the lineage of the rose, when we're looking at like Mary Magdalene and Isis, like the rose herself and all that means, just like as a metaphor with, you know, your thorns and your rose, in terms of love and compassion and heart-centered. So I think just for me, it's been like every house I've had, I have roses. I have a rose garden in the background. And I actually think a lot of that resonance for me just comes back to that protection energy and like that sacred space. And connecting like here in the modern day, like that lineage, saying like, hey, I remember. So those are some of the things that come up for me related to the rose.
Wow, yeah. I mean, we had no idea that you were so deeply connected to it. And the rose, for me personally, has been coming up a lot in the last year. Well, it's come through in energy healing sessions and whatnot, but it's been very prominent, especially, of course, with the name of the podcast. And just when we saw that, we were like, oh my gosh, like we need to ask her about this. So thank you for sharing that. And also the second time we've been hearing about the rose offering protection. So I think that that's something that's really fascinating. And no surprise, I was sitting with my rose deck before this, and I did a card pull, and I was like, what message, you know, wants to come through just as we chat with Christina today? And of course, I pulled the lineage of the rose card.
There you go. No coincidences.
No coincidences.
Yeah, I mean, people who are connected to that get pulled together and drawn together, you know. And it's funny, when I first started getting energy healing work done on myself, whenever that was, every healer would tell me, they're like, you have roses in all of your chakras. And like and I was like, okay. And I didn't know anything about anything, you know. I was like, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. What is, you tell me. And I was like, I have no idea. And the deeper I got into it, I got connected with more women who had studied this more deeply, and saw, just, I would watch as people would just get attracted into my field, and I would get attracted to theirs, of like people who hold that frequency and like were in that sisterhood, so to speak. So it's cool how that comes back together. And I think when we use symbols like the rose, right, it's like a, hey, come find me, like I'm your person. There's something specific about people who are resonant with that symbol. And it's cool for me when I get clients who you can see that's very much embedded in their field, because it is embedded in somebody's vibrational field if they're in that lineage.
Yeah, and it's funny too. I had a session with you, I think like years ago, and you pulled that card for me.
I did.
You did. And it was just kind of at that point in my kind of like journey, I had no idea like what that meant. I was like, oh, that's pretty. Like that's cool. And then yeah, it started to come up more consistently for me as like time went on. So
it unfolds.
Yeah.
As roses do.
Very full
Quite
circle.
Quite literally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
literally.
and then of course, transitioning into your new book, Codes of Divine Love, which of course the cover is a red rose. That was also something that I remember Lily and I, when you announced it and you showed the cover, we were both like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy because we were like, the rose is coming through so prominently right now for people. And your book, this book is just, it's so juicy. And so we
Thanks.
we really want to talk about it today. And we want to start with just, where did I know it's been a process, it's a continuation of manifestation mastery, but when did the download or the inspiration really come through for this book particularly? We want to know if you can kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, well, the original download about this book came through in early 2020. As just a, hey, this is going to be written, and that came with the manifestation mastery. And then this book, like, it was all kind of mapped out. A lot of the stuff that I'm working on now and have yet to start working on, like in 2020, I pretty much got it all delivered as like, here's your next 10 years. So that was like the original spark. And then from that point on, I'm just waiting for the, when. And yeah, so after I wrote Manifestation Mastery, I went through a really intense breakup, as we do. And pretty shortly after that, I was doing a lot of self-healing work. I was in my own process and I was learning so much through that breakup. And I think that there was a big piece of me as I was putting together these different parts of my story. I had also had at that same time a twin flame activation. So I had met my twin flame and I was being presented with different people in my life that were so clearly like exemplifying the nuances of these different soul connections. Like at the same time, it was like twin flame, soulmate, karmic, like all on a platter to like basically just show me kind of the difference in these frequencies. And I was in this space of just like curiosity. I wanted to figure it out, So I was like, hey, I'm ready because I would like to know some things. And then I got the date, at that point. Like I think my book launch for Manifestation Mastery was in January of whatever year that was. And then I started writing this I channeled this book like 2 months later. So I channeled this book over 2 different weekends. And then I sat on it for a while, much to everybody's very annoyed with me. I know, same. I was annoyed with myself, but I had to. And I kept trying to go to edit this, edit this book, read it back. And I couldn't. My brain was not, I couldn't. I would get through 2 pages and I'd be like, I can't. And then I started to really feel like the next relationship I was in, I was like feeling like it might be at a closure and I needed support. So I thought, there's no better time for me to finally edit this book on relationships. And I did, and it gave me all of the clarity I needed. And that kind of brings us to my launch.
Yeah, so it seems kind of like your breakup initially like brought you into more of the writing of this book, and then through the actual editing of this book, you went through another relationship closure of some kind.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that first relationship right before, like that was 2 years, and then this one was like a year and a half. So it was like, it's just, it's all in divine timing. And for me to really deliver information, it's this co-creative process of like, I'm channeling it, but in order to channel it, I have to be clear enough to channel it, and so I have to go through certain life experiences so I can be open as a vessel to bring it through. And I have more to say about that, right? But then I also have to live it out. Like, I don't get to just channel things, like not have to go through human shit. Like I have to do all of it. And that's important context, right? It's like, otherwise, if I'm talking about this stuff, it's empty words, right? But I think for me also, just to really come back to how important this work is, like the way that this book helped me navigate this last relationship transition was just so important. And it also helped my previous partner. He was definitely really struggling, and I had an advanced copy of the book, and one night he just stayed up and he read the book, and the next morning he was like, I read your book and I know that this is the right thing for us, and I feel completely different about it now. And it was really powerful for me, of like that this book helped him through it too and helped me through it. So it's important for me to like live out how helpful this is.
Yeah, I think that that's super powerful because I feel like it's probably so interesting for you too, being that so much of your work is what you channel, but then it's also like, but what about Christina, and like
Yeah,
Christina's life? And I feel like that's what you're talking about, is really like the marrying of the two and like the embodiment piece, which it sounds like the book just walked you through that. And
totally.
and we were going to ask you, like, what was the biggest personal initiation that bringing this book brought through for you?
My God. I mean, there's so much crazy shit that happened with this book. But, the other part of this is when I first channeled the book, it was over 2 different weekends. I mean, it's a beefy book. Like, we changed the size of the book because it was going to be 400 pages. It was going to be 450 pages if it was the same size as Manifestation Mastery. So it's like literally a different size and stuff so it wasn't so overwhelming. I mean, word count, it's almost double my first book. So I'm writing this first part, I'm channeling this first part, and I'm about to get to the twin flame section. And I'm really wanting to understand this twin flame thing because I had just had that activation. I met another incarnation of myself, and I'm like, what the fuck do I do with this? Sorry, can I swear? But I'm like, what do I do with this? And the twin flame section starts, and then just the stream cuts off. And essentially, I'm told I don't get the rest of the book until I tell him, until we talk about this. And that's the most horrifying thing of all time. So basically, I wait a couple weeks, and I end up having to have this conversation with this person, like, hey, we have the same soul. You're me, I'm you. Like, have you noticed? you know? And that's like not an easy conversation to have with someone who's not already in this space, right? It's like that if it was one of my, like somebody who's not doesn't understand any of this. And that was a huge initiation for me and opened up a ton. Like just me having that conversation, what that did for me, life changing. And the whole twin flame experience is such an intense activation. It's like such deep personal growth. And if you are not fortified in your ability to do your work, you will go insane. And so that was a huge initiation. And then I think this last breakup, of course, was where it's one of those things of really like, how do you end a situation when things are great, but it's not right? And that's a lot harder than when we know something is wrong, So that it was like that bravery and that much trusting of myself. And this is the thing, like somebody had asked me, people ask me questions like, well, don't you just get told if your relationship's done? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Like no one's telling me what to do with my life. Like that's not how that works, right? We are deciding what we do with our life. Like if I can stay in whatever relationship I want, but I get reflections back that are prompting me to my own inner knowing, right? And so I'm reading back this book that I wrote, and it's not like that book is saying you should break up with this person. That book is just explaining all these concepts, and that's mirroring things for me and evoking emotions and knowings where I'm like, oh my God, and like I think especially that piece of, what does it mean to embody love? And if there's a piece of me that's not fully sure or feels like it's off, it's not divine love to keep that person in this situation when they could be with somebody who is fully 100% in, you know? And that was the big one for me. Like, I think a lot of times people hold on because they're like, I don't want to hurt that person, but it's like, you're already hurting that person. If you deep down, like, know you're not supposed to be there and you're staying there, you're already hurting that person and you're hurting yourself. So yeah, that was a really, really hard, thing to initiate, you know? So I mean, matters of love and matters of the heart are not easy. And I think for those of us who are doing a lot of work to be in touch with our own emotions and our own experience and like really committed to living in alignment with our truth, like we tend to be the ones that have to initiate the hard conversations or have to initiate the endings or the completion. And that's really scary because you don't know how people are going to respond. You know, you obviously want it to unfold beautifully, but like we can't control how other people take that or how they respond or like a story they create, you know, because me ending something with you doesn't mean that you're bad or you're wrong. It just means like this isn't in alignment for me or us, you know, and we don't have to make that mean that anyone is bad. And that's what we tend to do is like, because we want an excuse. Humans want a reason to leave a situation. And so the reason they create is someone did something bad or they're wrong or they're not good enough or whatever. And for us to really shift in this higher level of consciousness with relationship and to live in alignment, we have to be able to close things up to say no and also understand on both sides that that doesn't have to mean anything negative about anyone involved. It's just complete. And that's a really beautiful thing. So, I mean, I had a lot of initiations through this. And I honestly think that entire like 2 years where I was sitting on the book, I've had so much. And I feel like that this book was holding the container of me shifting, in terms of relationship. And I mean, even career wise, really, I spent so much of the last 2 years, like, I mean, there was the dating period, dating different people. There was the committed relationship, you know, period. There was moving to a new state, you know, with my partner. And there was a lot of friendship changes. After my book, I mean, I went through probably like 5 or 6 really hard friend breakups, like pretty much all at the same time. And I was shattered. I mean, I was going through my romantic breakup and I was going through these friendship breakups with people who like were some of my closest friends, and I was completely shattered. And so, you know, during the last 2 years, it's been a lot of like exploring friendship, like love and friendship as well. And I haven't really been honestly that career focused. Like I've been really more dealing with the human relationship piece, which now I'm like, well, I had to because it kind of made it all come together with this book, you know? So I just feel like everything to do with relationships, I've really been tested the last 2 years. And so much of that is like personal. It's not things that people see. You know, we go through our own initiations, but that all has to happen for me to be able to like have these conversations and talk about what comes through with the book, because I just think there's a lot of channeled information that's really powerful that like in general that we're not using to its fullest because there's a gap in application, you know? And I feel like with a lot of my channeled work, like I'm not sure how valuable it is without me actually living things out and talking about the experience, because we have to kind of bridge that gap. Like I feel like often it's more helpful for people when I talk about what I got from that and how I applied that and how that affected my life. Like I actually think that part is typically more helpful for people. So that's a key piece of it. Like it just feels incomplete for me without the lived experience.
Yeah, yeah, it totally makes sense because I think that being someone in your audience, like I can definitely see you kind of like moving through your life, not just moving through your business. And I think that that's something that I love about you and I love listening to your content about, is just how, not to say that you like share like all these personal details, but it's more so just like this feeling of like living your life alongside running your business and doing all of the things that you love to do. So I really enjoy seeing that as well. And even like through your poetry book, like I think that really came through in that output as well. So kind of tying into this idea of the one, we're super curious about this. Like what like we think about, okay, the one, and then we read your book, and then it's, for me, like something that I took from it, I haven't read the whole thing yet, but kind of feels like, okay, we have soulmates, we have all of these different types of connections, and we might find our life partner in 3 people. We might find our life partner in 1 person. I think, the media in a lot of ways, for me at least, what I saw growing up was like, there is 1 person out there for you, and just kind of a lot of attention to this idea of the one. And we're wondering, so under this kind of idea, do you see a lot of people, or what's kind of your perception of, do people tend to kind of miss out on what's in front of them in this constant like pursuit for the one? And like, what does the one really even mean to you through everything that you've been through and writing your book?
Yeah, that's a good question. My feeling around this is, do I think there's just one person out there for everybody? Definitely not. Like, definitely not. Do I think the one is the idea of the one is a high frequency choice? Yes. And I am very much a believer in choosing the one and committing to the one, and using that commitment, that depth of commitment, to bring you closer to yourself and to bring you closer to source. And so I say that because I think sometimes when I talk about, like, you might have multiple the ones in your life. You might have multiple, some people, you might have multiple very long-term relationships, whether that's a marriage or not, whatever, right? And those people are the one at that time. And that's a beautiful thing of like, because then you're going through different experiences with that long-term partner that's bringing something different out within you and teaching you different lessons. And other people, they're going to be with, one main person their whole life. Everybody's just different, but the truth of the matter is, like, well, for me, when I just look objectively at someone's soul contracts, because I can have my own human stuff, but it's interesting for me to take the data of when I'm channeling and when I'm reading someone's field, and what's in their field isn't always what my human ego wants to see. Right. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes I've seen people and their contracts are like, no, this person's going to have 5 husbands. That's just kind of what it is. Right. And for most people, like, their love contracts aren't that specific, right? So for the majority of people, it could go a ton of different ways, right? But for some people, it is that specific, or it is very like, hey, no, like, you are going to be, you're not going to have a deep committed relationship with somebody else until this age. Like, that can be in the contract. So when I look at it from that perspective, it's like, I don't like to judge anyone's experience. Like, hey, maybe that person's supposed to have 8 husbands this life. Who am I to judge? It is what it is. Like, I don't care. Whatever makes you happy, whatever teaches you your soul lessons. So no, I don't think there's just one person for people. I think we have multiple options, and we will have people, there will be people that there will be a lot of energetic momentum toward, of this is a very highly aligned partner for you. And so there might be somebody that you are contracted and destined to meet, and maybe the an option, very aligned option would be for you to get married, for example. But you also have free will choice, and that might not happen. But you completed the part of the contract. You were supposed to be in each other's lives and meet in some way, right? And the thing is that if there is a person that you are meant to be, let's just say marriage. Let's say you're supposed to, like, there's a person where it's very highly in alignment if you're going to come together. That person is an expression of a vibrational frequency. And so if you are that person, and let's say that person, they make certain choices, and it's like, this is destiny, this is a contract, and they keep choosing no, 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 someone else who vibrates very similarly will come in for you to get married to get the same lessons, right? So my point is, like, people will cling in love. They cling to people like, but you're my soulmate. You're my twin flame. You're my whatever. Like, you're my, we're supposed to be together. And that can be very, I guess, kind of true. I don't like the supposed to, but you get what I'm saying. Like, that can be in very high alignment. And like, yeah, you have a soul contract. And like, that was maybe the plan. That was the timeline that was energized. But if that person can still say no, and that doesn't ever throw you off your track. If that person says no, somebody else will come in who vibrates very similarly, and you'll get all the same lessons. Like the reason why that was an optimal, highly aligned timeline was because of what that was going to teach you and evoke within you, right? And so somebody else will come in to play that part beautifully. And even better because they're saying yes, they're choosing you, you know. So that's, I guess, how I see the one.
Okay, yeah. And I'm so glad you brought up marriage, because that was something that we wanted to talk about too. Because in the book, it says marriage is a very human thing to do, which I thought it was kind of funny because I don't know, I just did.
Yeah.
And so, you know, even when you were talking, you're like, yeah, you may be contracted to marry someone. So I guess, do you have any more kind of insight around that? And because, you know, it's like marriage is, it's definitely like making that commitment like fully, but then it also is, there's a lot involved with a divorce, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like the shame and all of that. I'm talking about like the logistics of like getting a divorce. So it's kind of like, when we're thinking about it all, why go through all of the motions, I guess, if I don't, do you kind of know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, totally. Well, you know, when I say people they're contracted to marry somebody, like that's not precise. Really, maybe they're contracted to be in a long-term committed, like this is my life partnership. And what we decide to do with that, if we want to choose legal marriage or not, like that's the human part of it. You know, because we have this marriage thing we've created as humans. And so they're kind of two different conversations. Like from what the guides are, what I'm channeling, like they don't care about the human shit, right? They're just talking about the energetic interaction of like being in a committed life partnership. And if we want to do the legal stuff around it, that's our choice. You know, the conversation around marriage is big because of all, I think, the history of it, you know, the energy that container holds. There's also the, you know, of course, like the legal bit. And I totally understand why some people don't want to be in marriages legally, and also why they do, you know. So that's just like a personal thing. That's for me. I think that what it will look like for us to really shift these human contracts we have in a way that allows for this higher consciousness type of relationship to exist more commonly. We're going to have to adjust the marriage contract. You're going to have to adjust the way divorce goes, you know. I think in some ways divorce being so messy or difficult in that way logistically is, I actually think there are pros to that, because I think now there are a lot of people who, whether they're pretending it's for spiritual reasons or they're just completely like unconscious, there's swipe culture, right? A lot of people who are doing this, you know, open relationship thing, it's just a different iteration of swipe culture, you know, and it's like has a spiritual lens on it. Not everybody, certainly not everybody, but I'm just saying, like, you can slap whatever label you want on it, but you can tell when that's just what somebody doesn't want to be in the energy of commitment. And we have a huge problem on this planet with the energy of commitment. People don't want to work. People don't want to have a job. They don't want to have a single you know, partner. Like they don't want to make choices, and they're just living in avoidance. And we're going to watch as, you know, society is crumbling because people don't want to make choices because they're afraid of commitment. And I think that's part of my issue with, you know, when we talk about alignment and following our truth, and I fully believe that. And I also watch as people take that as an excuse to not commit to something and allow that to build them and grow them and strengthen them, right? There's so much about being in a container, right? Like if you're in a marriage and there is no option of running, you can't just, this is hard, we're breaking up. How many people, the second it gets fucking hard, they dip? A lot of people, right? Even people who think they're conscious and awake, right? It's a natural like defense mechanism. It's protection mechanism. Like I want to get out. And there's something about when that isn't an immediate option that requires me to go deeper into this and like work through this and communicate more effectively, you know? And so my previous partner and I, for example, and we weren't married, and I know this is very different, but it's just the energetic of this, of us living out, you know, we moved out to Arizona to basically isolate ourselves. So that was pretty much the intention. And you know, you don't think about like, oh, what if I break up? So we're out here, we're in the middle of nowhere, by ourselves, and I'm like, and we live together, and we don't have anyone we can go stay with, and I'm like, you know, we need to end this relationship. And there's no option of like, I'm going to pack my bags tonight and go stay at my friend's house because this is uncomfortable. Instead, it's no, we're staying in this house together for the next however long, and have to hear each other crying and like be with each other's intense energy, and like every interaction, like it's like you can't run away from that. And that's really fucking hard and uncomfortable. But going through that, as much as I was itching out of my skin, and like, you know, you don't want to feel that. And he just wanted to leave. You know, he was like, I'm leaving. I'm like, you're going to drive 3 hours, you know? And that called us both up in terms of like facing emotions that we didn't want to face, and like witnessing each other and emotions we didn't want to, and like communicating in a much clearer way. You know, it's true vulnerability. And so, you know, it's a very nuanced conversation. But I think, you know, with marriage, I know that there are so many like problems with how that is done. I actually really like this idea. You know, in a lot of cultures, marriage every like 7 years or so, they check in. The contract is up after 7 years, and then you decide if you want to continue another 7 years, or if it's time to do another partner. I'm like, that sounds like a good idea to me, you know? So I just think there's a lot of other options. I'm not qualified to really make a good suggestion, but I'm sure there are people who are. You get what I'm saying? Like it's kind of a different issue in and of itself, but I think we got to be careful of that. And also, like, I want people to know, yeah, there's not just one person for you, because I hope that encourages them. If you know something is off, don't stay because you think you're going to be alone forever. You won't. You know, and I don't want people to stay in a situation because of scarcity or fear because of that. And at the same time, when people hear that, I also don't want them to be like, oh, well, there's a million people out there for me, so like I don't really care about this one. And it gets hard, I'm out. I'm uncomfortable, I'm out. You know? So there's that fine line with that conversation.
Yeah. It's definitely a fine line. And the discernment piece around, okay, is this really right, or am I just jumping ship on this? Like, yeah. That I think is like the bigger, like the underlying energetic for so many people. And yeah, thanks for sharing all that. That sparked a lot for me personally. But okay, so one other thing that I'm curious about around this idea of like soulmates, or the one, or being in committed relationships. So everyone has a first love. Everybody, what's the difference between, I mean, first loves are powerful, you know, like that can be like a really powerful experience. In your perception, or in your experience, like what is the difference between that powerful first love feeling versus a soul line partner? And I know that they are the same, like in certain situations, and I'm sure it's different for everyone, but just curious about your experience.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think that the more we feel the frequency of love through different experiences, we can start to perceive previous experiences of love differently, you know? And I think, like, I know my first love and how powerful and beautiful and magical that was. And like, I wonder if I had that side by side with like the love I have now in my life, how would it actually compare? Right? Because I can like think it was perfect and magical and everything, but I was also younger and a different version of myself. And like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, and so for me personally, I know that with each relationship I've been in, and yes, especially romantically, but I'll broaden that out in terms of like friendship and like family dynamics. It's like the more life I live, and the more people I meet, and the more I get to know myself, and the more I know that frequency just with my connection with the divine, you know, and like with myself, there are deeper layers and a deeper understanding to love. And I think for me, for example, with with love, something that I have realized over time is I wonder how much of the love I had on a pedestal and like felt so strongly and felt it was so magical and healing and everything. Now I'm like, how much of that was I was just insanely comfortable. And when we look at a soul aligned partner, the thing is that there's a component of, on a vibrational level, what's going to support you the most in your soul's evolution. And that coincides with just the human choice we make. I have been having this conversation a lot with friends recently because a lot of people, you know, are just rearranging relationships and questioning. And I'm like, at the end of the day, when it comes to the person you're going to, your life partner, you're making a choice. What's important for you? Like, you have to get your priorities straight about, like, do you want that? Is that soulmate best friend energy where it's safe and comfortable? Like, is that your highest priority? Is the highest priority like passion and intensity and sexuality, right? Is the highest priority intense growth? You know, and different romantic relationships have brought up different frequencies. And there have been certain times where the way the love was expressed was like, I was seen, like, seen so clearly and directly that it scared the shit out of me and I was uncomfortable. And so I ran because it was too much. When really that was like, that love was calling me up to a higher iteration, you know? And so I know for me, like, in my prior, I don't know, like right now, I've realized like, oh, what I thought was this divine love was actually comfort and just deep safety. But there's this other iteration of love for me that where I'm growing a lot. I'm growing a lot and it's not easy. And I get sometimes frustrated. And it's hard, but that's a different type of love. And that's my priority right now because of how it's helping me. It's bringing me closer to myself. It's helping me feel empowered. You know what I mean? So I think for people to realize, like, what are your priorities in a life partner? What's important to you? And do I think that we can have it all with one person? Yes and no. I think that of course your aligned life partner should be, you know, your best friend and feel that passion, that love, and that romance and help you grow. All of that should be present, but like the flavors of that and kind of the levels of that are going to be different with different people, depending on their personality type and just like how they are and how your frequencies meet, you know? And so I think about this with friendships. Like, I have friends who are like home, like just, it's like divine mother energy, right? And then I have friends that like call me up. They're like, look, this is your blind spot. And I love you enough to tell you this. I love you enough to say, stop with your bullshit, right? And it's like two very different types of friendships, and they're both divine love. There's just different expressions, you know? And when we're picking up a life partner, you know, in that long-term partnership, ideally we learn to communicate in ways and embrace our multidimensionality so that those different flavors can come out in different people, and people are going to evolve, right? So what starts off one way might change into something else because you're right. Like, if you're married to a different person, you know, every 5 years. So that's what I'm saying. Like, yes and no. And also because I think that people need to stop trying to get everything from one person. And when you're satisfied within yourself, you're not trying to do that. You know, you're looking at what's supportive for me, and that person doesn't have to be everything for me. That's unfair. Like, I don't want somebody to feel like I have to be everything for them, you know? And so, yeah, we do have to make a choice. We have to make a choice about what we want in life partnership. And I know everybody wants to avoid a choice and they want to know what's best for me. And at a certain point of what's best for you, like, you're always deciding what you want, what kind of flavor you want.
The book talks about like soul resonance versus ego resonance. And I was like, oh, and it kind of reminded me of what you just said in terms of the like being comfortable, because I think it was like one sentence like in the beginning of the book, and it was just like, what many of you think is instant soul resonance is actually ego resonance, which essentially is like what you're comfortable with. So that kind of hit me too, because I think that me personally, I've had like soulmate connections where it like that, exactly what you said, like that deep friendship, like that comfort and safety is just like so fulfilling in some ways. But yeah, there's also many sides to the coin in terms of how we can actually be our best self. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, well, and I'm so glad you brought that up. And I'll say, like, this is something that comes up with a lot of my clients, particularly my male clients, who all are very caught on, well, I want to feel those sparks. And I'm like, 99% of the time, like talking to you guys, I'm like, when you meet your person, you're not going to like her. Because what they think are sparks is my ego feels comfortable with this person, right? Like, and I'm like, you're not going to like her, probably. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be later. So often the person that's good for us and helping, like, who's resonant with our higher self, often there's a trigger. It's either like you just overlook them, or there's something about them that you're not sure about at first, right? That's true in all types of relationships. That is, I'm not going to say always, right? But generally, that's what it is. And so you have to look at, what part of me is this person resonating with, And so am I looking at resonance based on like who I am now and how I've been, or who I'm going to be? And something that I'll share that in the last, I mean, I've done this for a long time, but pretty much every day when I go into meditation, one of the first things I do is I go into my castle. I go into my castle and I take my throne as the queen that I am in my castle, in my meditation, and I look over to see who's going to sit in the king's chair. And the reason I do that is because I'm looking at who is vibrationally resonant with me as a queen. And many times I get a different person sitting there than who I've been in a relationship with, right? And that's telling me something about, whoa, maybe this person is really resonant with who I've been. And no wonder I feel stuck here. But when I look at who's going to resonate with me fully in my power, like who's going to resonate with me in 10 years, me living as my higher self, that can be a very different answer. And sometimes it is the same, So that's just a little thing that I do. And it just, back to what you're saying, like, what part of me is this resonating with? And really, for us to keep our lives moving forward, we want to be choosing things, people, opportunities that are vibrating ahead of us.
Yeah, that was, yes, hitting so much personally for me. And I can definitely speak to the initially feeling like someone isn't for you, or kind of just like overlooking them. And then suddenly, for me, like my body led me to my partner. And
Yes.
I feel like it's like, listen
Same.
to your body. Listen to your body over your mind, and you will be really surprised about like what is actually for you. And so, yeah, I'm so glad that you're sharing all of this, because there's just a lot of gold in here. And one more thing that I would love to touch on is the book talks so much about the idea of unconditional love, which I feel like is such a fluffy word as well. And something that you were mentioning is like us understanding and getting clear on our priorities of what it is we want from our partner, from our romantic partner, understanding that, we can't get every single thing that we seek from just one person. But also, I'm wondering how, like, getting clear on that, but then also in congruence, like loving without expectation. I feel like, do you have anything to say on that? Because I feel like that correlates to, I mean, that's a lesson that I've been walked through personally lately. And I feel like I would just be really curious to hear what your thoughts are on like loving without expectation while also still withholding what your priorities are and what you desire.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing. People don't like this idea of unconditional love because they're like, no, there should be conditions of like, if this person disrespects you, then no, you don't get access to my love. And I understand what they're saying, but like, this is where what is described in the book as unconditional love and like how I see it, it's a different thing of, I can embody love and show, and and vibrate with love toward every person around me. And if somebody is behaving in a way that's not healthy for me or not loving, I can still be in love and lovingly say, and I'm not allowing you in my field. And that doesn't have to mean I don't have love toward you anymore. Right. And that's very different than, screw you, I hate you, bye. It can be like, I'm still only sending love your way and I'm not allowing you in my field. Right. And so that's a very different energy. And when it comes to the conversation about expectations, this is the nuance. They spend a bit of time on this in the book around like, it's important to know your requirements for who gets to be in a relationship with you and who gets to benefit from your energy and from your field, to know what the requirements are. And it's like boundaries, right? That has nothing to do with any individual person. It's like, these are my requirements. And I am going to show and express love without projecting onto you, I need you to be this. Like, I need you to be this. I need you to show up this way. But this is me living in my world, and these are my requirements for being in my life. It doesn't matter who's popping in, everybody. These are my requirements. This is what, the container of romantic love, partnership, or friendship looks like for me. And you're either going to slide into that and calibrate there, or you're not. And I'm not going to expect anything. I'm just going to let myself be pleasantly surprised if you do or if you don't. You see what I'm saying? And so it's like, instead of, hey, I want you to be this way, like that is pushing something on someone versus this is what I need in my life. And you're either going to show up to that or calibrate to that, or you're not, because that's not how you want to, or that's not what the container of romantic love or friendship feels like for you, and I feel that that's a very loving way to call people up. And I will tell you, like, the relationship I'm in right now, we've had this conversation, and like, he is not in this world. So a lot of how it's like, he's never met someone who is like this in at all, with all my little boundaries, all the things I say, and I'm like, look, like, I am unattached to whether or not like how you show up is how you show up. And I'm being very clear of what I need in a partner are all of these things. And that's that. And I'm just telling you that. I'm not telling you you have to do that, but I'm telling you, me as Christina, this is what I need in a partner. And whoever is my ideal partner is going to show up that way. And that was very like triggering for him at first, right? But then what that was I just held, instead of me saying, I want you to do this, I want you to be like that, I need this from you, I'm saying, this is the container I'm holding, and you can come sit here if you want, right? That gave him the choice of like, to look at those requirements and say, do I want to be that man? And he got to make that choice and choose to be that man versus me saying, we're in a relationship, and so I need you to do this. Do you see the difference in the energy there? And so that's a very powerful way to invite someone to rise and to call someone up, not in a way of I'm pulling you, but like, here's the seat at the table if you want it. And they feel empowered through that, right? And so he had to took a step back with that. And like, at first he was triggered, and then he decided to take the seat at the table. And then he felt good because that was his choice. It was his choice to do those things. It wasn't me saying, I need this from you. And so it's a nuance. But I feel, and this is an opinion, but this is how I run my life. Like, anybody who's dated me, anybody who's my friend, people who are in container, like who are clients, like, you will feel this from me. I'm like, you're either going to come here or you're not. And like, you can do what you want, but like, this is what I require from you, and that is my way of loving people, because I'm like, I see your highest potential, and I'm going to allow you to exist in your highest potential, and I'm not going to allow you to exist in anything else.
I love that perspective. Yeah, it's such an energetic shift. Like, I can just feel it hearing it from you. And yeah, definitely feels like a pivot in a new way for many people. I mean, I've definitely spent time doing the first thing, being like, trying to not manipulate, but it's kind of like, I feel like that's kind of the more common thing to do, is be like, hey, this is what I want you to do. And like,
yeah,
not in a necessarily controlling way, but maybe that's just how a lot of us observe relationships growing up. I
Well,
don't
and
know.
it's how we're trying to love, right? Like when you're doing
Mhm.
that, like, yeah, there are people that are like, whatever. But most of the time it's coming from love of like you love that person and you just want to help. And then
Yeah.
we don't realize that we're like pushing this expectation on them. And I'll think about like, I mean, growing up, like think about like parent and child. Like how many parents are like pushing you because they want you to be better because they love you. And you're feeling like, I'm not good enough for you, you know? And
Mhm.
so it's helpful for us to have conversations about this to understand where people are coming from and then also to understand like there's a different way of communicating it and holding the energy. And I think also this is obviously this is about, you know, love, relationships, whatever, but all of this is so important for parenting. Like this is stuff I've really been thinking about of like what kind of parent do I want to be? Um and it's hard to hold all of that. Like I can know these things, but then you know think about an application, like this is real rewiring, you know. So I think just having that compassion for ourselves as well of like we're gonna say things and you know mess up and whatever, like but we're learning, and at least we're like getting examples of different ways to communicate and just at least trying, you know.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. So, okay, this has all been fantastic. Thank you so much, Christina. To wrap up, we just want to ask you, what are you loving right now? What is lighting you up in your world?
Oh my god. um uh, so much. I mean, I'm gonna say actually, like I mean, this relationship I'm in right now is like has been so powerful for me because I've it's a totally different type of person than I've ever dated before, and I've never grown so much as I have since I met him. Um, and a lot like there's been so much that has been lighting me up and exciting me, like career wise, personally, like um lifestyle, whatever. And all of that has kind of stemmed from like that relationship of things that he's reflected back to me and pushed me in a lot of ways. And so on brand with this conversation, I just want to like call that out, you know, because like an aligned relationship like pushes you to be more of yourself. Like I feel like I have been forced to become more of myself, you know, and that is really powerful. So I'll just say that um I'm like really on this uh I'm going to say like divine masculine kick right now, which has really come from I've been deep in this like how do we embody queen energy? Like really, like how do I be the queen in my life and that frequency, because to me that is like that has been my pursuit my whole life without calling it that, of like I want this epic relationship, right? I want my empire. I want to be in service. I want to support as many people as possible. Like your health, your wellness, like your radiance, how you treat yourself, like your style, like all of that comes together. And I think that a lot of people are afraid to like claim that they want it all, or they don't know how to like have it all. And for me, that's about a frequency you embody, which comes back to, yeah, the divine feminine. But really, what's missing for people right now is the divine masculine. And as women, like the only way we can really express our full power and like allow our oracle to really flow and get all these things we want, and like for even like within relationship, we have to have a healthy integrated divine masculine. And I have been like hardcore on this kick, and it's just the theme that's coming up. Like every person I talk to, I'm like, where's your divine masculine? Because that's the gap between knowing what we think we want, we're having an idea, and actually bringing it to fruition. And I think I'm just like kind of on this kick right now. I'm getting frustrated with people because I love them. I'm getting frustrated about how many people have big things to share with this world and the ability to impact people like so deeply and powerfully, and they're not doing anything with it. And I'm getting a little annoyed, like, love you, but you have an important message. I don't care if you're afraid of being seen. Get the hell out there. Like let the mission be greater than your fear. You know, all these little nigglies we have. And I just want to see people taking more action because our planet needs it. And that's the thing that fires me up. It's like, yeah, there's all kinds of shit I do that's uncomfortable and people could judge me or say whatever. It doesn't matter because it's if I you know, if 5 people make fun of me, but I help 5, then it was worth it. You know, so I'm just going to say it. I don't really care. Um, And so that's pretty much like what I'm fired up about, and everything that I'm doing right now is kind of related to that.
We love it. Also, did not know you were in a new relationship. Kind of guessed based on the stories, but didn't fully know.
Yeah.
Congrats. Super
Thanks.
exciting. So okay, I love just hearing when you go like I feel like your sacral just goes off, and I love hearing it. So
Yeah.
where can people find you? How can they work with you right now? Let them know.
Yeah. I'm everywhere at Christina the Channel. So on Instagram, YouTube, my website is christinathechannel.com. My podcast is called Multidimensional with Christina the Channel. And I don't know when what this will release. So depending on when it comes out, I might have a program running, or if you're interested in learning energy healing, then you can always look at the high energy healing training program. All that's like on my website. And then I have my membership Ascension School, and we have weekly channeling calls, monthly energy healing, and it's all spiritual development. So it's a lot of fun in there. And those are all the ways you can find me.
Amazing. Yeah, this is coming out like literally next week. So
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
yeah.
Well, then, if it's coming out next week, then check out Embodied Goddess, because it's exactly what I've been talking about. And it's one of my favorite things I've ever run. I just am really thinking, and this is like big visioning for me, around like, I really want to make spaces for women who are like living this caliber of consciousness in every area of their life, to connect with each other and to keep like having a safe space to be in, to be supported, and also to keep growing, you know? And I think sometimes as women, we can accidentally create, manifest, perceive like negative situations, because that's the only way that we get supported. It's like, oh, if I have a problem, then I'll pay to get help. And we need more spaces of like, no, like, you are in your goddess energy, your queen energy, and living as a queen, you have support, and you keep getting to have help with what you want to create next, right? And like, just keep growing and deepening your love for yourself and people around you. And like, that's the shift that I really want people to understand and to make, of like, you don't need to, you shouldn't need to have a problem to say I'm ready to keep expanding, because that's where life gets really, really fun. You know, my life is like, I'm just creating all the time. And that's what we're here to do. And once you stop needing to have problems, you can focus on all the cool shit you want to create, you know? So anyway, check out Embodied Goddess. It's epic.
Love that. Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Christina, for coming on our show. We so enjoyed having you and getting to speak to you about these incredible topics. I know our listeners will be over the moon about this. I received so much. I'm going to have to go back and write some notes when I re-listen to this. So thank you again.
Thank you. This is so much fun. I love being here with you guys. So thanks for having me.